So not only do we have to deal with an identity crisis amongst black people, we call ourselves Moors, Hebrew Israelites, Muslims, Christians, you name it, 5%ers, Kemet's, everything in the book. We can't identify or agree upon one thing, right? Not only on top of that, we have mental health issues in our community, right? Where people are most of us don't even know we have mental health issues, dealing with what contributes from our surroundings, which is epigenetics, something I've always been talking about on my channel. But this recent study confirms what I've been saying, or further confirms what I've been saying. Stress of poverty, racism raise risk of Alzheimer's for African Americans, new research suggests. Okay. And I'm going to read a bit of the article for you guys and give you guys my commentary on this. So I just came across this article. It was published July 16th this year from WashingtonPost.com. And the article says, a new group of studies into racial disparities amongst people with Alzheimer's disease suggests that social conditions, including the stress of poverty and racism, substantially raise the risk of dementia for African Americans. In 4 separate studies, researchers found that conditions that affect blacks disproportionately compared with other groups such as poor living conditions, poverty, of course, and stressful events such as the loss of a sibling, the divorce of one's parents, or chronic unemployment have severe consequences for brain health later on. One study of University of Wisconsin researchers found that stress literally takes years off a person's life in terms of brain function, and an average of 4 years for African Americans compared with the 1.5 years for whites. Another Wisconsin study showed that living in a disadvantaged neighborhood is associated with later decline in cognitive function, and even the biomarkers linked to Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia. Wow. In the other 2 studies, researchers with Kaiser Permanente and the University of California at San Francisco found a higher degree of dementia risk for people born in states with high rates of infant mortality. Researchers at Kaiser and the University of California at Irvine found that racial disparities in the incidence of dementia that were previously found among people who were 65 and older also appeared in the very oldest demographic, people who are 90 or older. This is a pretty deep article, and this was done by a team of epidemiologists. These are people certified in studying epigenetics. That's something I've always been talking about on my channel. Okay. So again, family, reading this article, you're on my channel, you're subscribed to me, you're listening. You have been affected by this. You have. I've been affected by this. I've been affected by unemployment, poor living conditions at one point, the loss of a sibling, or a loss of a loved one, rather, at one point. I've been affected by one or the other of these things that they found in their studies. So, of course, I'm affected by it, and you are definitely affected by it. We're all affected by this. This is the system that we live in. This is the system that the dominant white society controls, right? And yes, I could definitely say this is part of a eugenics ideology to control the population of quote unquote African Americans. This is something that Margaret Sanger has always alluded to doing, is controlling the population, or she just wanted to eradicate the population of Negroes, people like us, right? But, I've talked about this before in my other videos where mental health is passed down through DNA, right? This is where I talked about where all black people suffer from a mental disorder or mental health issue, where this article here from grandmotherafrica.com says a study of group of African Americans finds trauma of slavery passed on to their children's genes. So this type of stuff here that they're talking about is passed down, right? It's unofficially passed down. Now, this was a study done by a group of African Americans that actually had their ancestry traced back to Africa, and they linked it in terms of stress and poverty, stress levels, their living conditions, and the fact that because their ancestry had slaves, it was passed down through their DNA, right? This is the same thing, but this is dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. But the point is that this is passed down through you scientifically, genetically. It's passed down. This is a never-ending cycle until this system, like I've been saying, until the system that we live in is completely eradicated. We separate from the system that's owned and controlled by the dominant white society. That's the only permanent solution, in my opinion. Just completely separating from people who oppress us and completely separating from our own people who make us look back. The coons, the Sambos, the sellouts. Right? Those people who are still having these identity crisis issues. Right? I had a brother, so I don't know, some brother or some guy on my one of my videos talking about, hey, brother, you're the one that is in a sucking place. You're calling each other black. You know we're not black. And I reply back, I'm like, okay, you sound like a Moor. You got that Moor science temple ideology. And I was right. He was a Moor, you know, talking about international law, this, and, you know, talking about black means this. I've heard it all before. I've seen it all before. I've studied the Moors, and I've studied Nubal Drew Ali, and I got a Black's Law dictionary. I have a John Bouvier's dictionary. I've studied with Taj Tariq Bey. You know, I've dealt with all that. So, like I said, I take bits and pieces from information that I come across and apply it to myself. But again, a vast majority of us were having identity crisis issues. So we have a group of people calling themselves Hebrew Israelites, Moors, 5%ers, you know, NOI, Christians. We need to come to a consensus as to who we are as a people, right? And that's another part of epigenetics. It's how you grew up, your environmental factors. What caused you to come up with that ideology? If you live in an affluent neighborhood where you didn't have to deal with poverty, crime, and drugs, what would your outcome on life be? How would it be, right? Would you be considered a person that's a sellout? Would you be thinking about black empowerment? How would your life be? Right? So that's the point I'm saying. It's comes down to, and this article solidifies this, epigenetics, your surroundings, how you live. Because everything that you deal with in life, right? Circumstantial issues in life. Losing a loved one in your family, jobs, unemployment, you know, stress at your job, your kids, all leads to things contributing to environmental factors affecting your everyday life, cognitive functions, psychological issues, right? So this is what we're dealing with, family. This is what we're dealing with, right? So I just wanted to put this out there, fam. This is the article. I have the full article in the description so you can check it out. But this is powerful. And again, this is an ongoing war to continue to control the population of black people and Hispanics as well. You know, this is not only affecting blacks, it's affecting Hispanics, because historically blacks and Hispanics are, by demographics, the poorest group of people in the so-called United States of America. We're the poorest compared to whites in terms of average income, right? So, like I said, your surroundings, epigenetics is something that continues to control how you live and the outcomes that you make growing up in life in general. It affects relationships, right? You grew up in a single parent family in poverty. It affects the kind of men or women that you choose in your life. If you grew up in a drug infested environment, single parent, right? You want to, as a coping mechanism, you may want to be familiar with those surroundings. Because that's all you know. You know poverty, you know drugs. So you get hooked on drugs. You're around drug fiends. And that cycle continues. You can be in an affluent neighborhood, wealthy, right? And you're surrounded with other kids who are rebellious with their parents. They go out partying, they go out drinking or whatever. And that cycle continues. You got money, but you're still doing drugs. You're still out there partying, but you're rich, right? So again, it's all about epigenetics. It's all about your surroundings and how your upbringing contributes to cognitive functions and what you are doing from your day-to-day life. And when the older you get, it affects your brain, and what the study indicates for people of color or people of African descent. It leads to issues dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia, right? When you're dealing with all these environmental factors. All right, family. So anyway, like I said, the link will be in the description. You can check out the full article in its details. All right, family. If you haven't, check out my other video about why black people suffer from a mental disorder or mental health issues. That link will also be down below in the description. All right, family. Until next time, make sure you follow me on social media at The Black Separatist on Instagram and Twitter. The links will be down below in the description. If you have any suggestions or if you want to email me for anything, my email is also down below in the description, GMOGmedia@gmail.com. Until next time, family, Chauncey, a.k.a. The Black Separatist, signing out. Peace.